II use showed that in 93.6% of all cases examined, these trigger words and phrases matched up with those used in the Korean War, the Vietnam War, and the Gulf War. So always pay attention to trigger words. In the Vietnam War era, so you should remember this, the Vietnam War era, polling using Tavistock methodology was used with devastating effect against the American people. And you should remember the Gulf War, an example of Tavistock method, was the way that State Department kept on referring to its embassy staff in Kuwait as hostages, although none were ever imprisoned. In fact, every single one of them was free to leave at any time, but were ordered to remain in Kuwait so that propaganda could be made out of their situation. In essence, the hostages were hostages of the State Department. Unable to goad President Hussein into firing the first shots, another contrived situation like Pearl Harbor had to be mounted. April Gillespie name will forever be associated with the treachery and infamy. What followed was an elaborate theft of millions of barrels of Iraqi oil by Kuwait. Hussein was given the all clear by U.S. Ambassador to Baghdad, April Gillespie, to attack Iraq and put an end to a situation that was costing the Iraqi people billions of dollars. But when the attack was mounted, Bush, the elder, lost no time in sending the U.S. military to help Kuwait. President Bush whipped up support against Iraq by using the fake hostage claim. This is where the Tavistock Institute will fail. While it has been able to convince the majority of Americans that our policies for the Middle East are right, Tavistock has not been able to gain control of Syria, Iran, Iraq, Algeria, and Saudi Arabia. These are the countries right now that they are focusing on all of their efforts on toppling. They killed Gaddafi, Hussein, Abu Mubarak, who else? Somebody else. A whole lot of them. All of this is these are goes back to the nations in Genesis 10. Go ahead.
Osama.
Yeah, him. They got rid of him too. He wasn't who they propagandized to make us believe. It is at this point that Tavistock's devious plan to dispossess the Arab nations of their oil is coming unglued. See, it didn't work out back in the Gulf War time the way they expected. The days when M16 could dispatch Arabs like the Philippines and Captain Hill to undermine Muslim state has long since gone. Anything in here you don't understand, research. Don't just put it. Don't just take the handout or the information I give to you and go put it in a note or in a shelf someplace and then just turn on the TV, because that's part of the brainwashing. You don't know things that you should know. The Arab countries have learned from their mistakes, and today they trust the British government far less than they did at the start of World War I. The dictatorship of Mubarak of Egypt is in trouble. This was before they displaced him. So this man knows what he's talking about, because we are on the other side of that, so we know it's true, right? Muslim fundamentalists seek to make tourism hazardous, and Egypt relies on hard currency from abroad to keep floating, besides the $3 billion annual gift from U.S. taxpayers. This is where your taxpayers' money goes, where people can't get the old people medical help, or people are homeless or losing their jobs, because their objective now is to destroy America, because they have to destroy America and democracy in order for the one world government to come into place. Okay. Likewise, Syria is not going to stand alongside U.S. policy that favor Israel over the Palestinians for very much longer, which we see that taking place. They've been trying to get rid of Assad. Okay, y'all know about that, right? You know about Assad, the president of Syria? They've been trying to get rid of him for about 3 or 4 years. The same time they were getting rid of Muammar Gaddafi. And people said Gaddafi was good to his people. Okay? They made up and made us think he was a really bad person so we would be angry and be okay with spending the tax dollars, because it's not that they couldn't do it, but they wanted to brainwash us through giving us fluoride and sodium to keep us passive and subdued, that we are dumbed down. Okay? Passive. They can do anything and we won't protest or we won't fight against it. We are afraid. Now we are afraid and we in a bad place because their plan has been working for so long and there's not been anybody. The people who've been sounding an alarm they lose their credibility by being labeled conspiracy theorists or crazy. Okay?
And is that why, like, the Middle Eastern countries control their media in terms of information that comes into their country?
Well, they trying to stop the perversion from.
Right, that's what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to be propagandized by outside influence, so they limit their citizens on what they can listen to or see.
Well, part of that is communism. So they already subdued those other countries. The dictators did subdue those countries, but we were the ones who's now bringing about the perversion aspect of it. They already took the resource and have the people oppressed and subdued, and now we've experienced what we thought was freedom with the democracy, because the people who were in Germany that was doing all of this Tavistock stuff was placed over here. So we were founded as a nation, so the people think, because there's two group of people, there was always two governments going on. The ones who was godly, who wanted freedom and all that, but then the other people, the shadow people of the 300s, they always been at work because of back what took place in Genesis 11. Okay? Are you with me so far? All right. So, at home, billions of dollars were poured into the coffers of Tavistock by the U.S. government. Among the beneficiaries of these billions of dollars were the National Training Laboratories, Harvard Psychological Clinic, Wharton School, Stanford's Hoover Institute, RAND, MIT, the National Institute of Mental Health. Mental health is not even real. It's demon spirits who take away people's mental health. But they've taken away God being the answer to everything and made these institutions and education and science be the answer for everything. Georgetown University, Esalen Institute, Center of Advanced Study and Behavioral Science, Institute for Social Research at Michigan, and scores of other think tanks and institutions of higher learning, because the institution of higher learnings is what they use to brainwash people with. And they don't, nothing about this has to do with God.
You know, it makes you think that if you start out in high school, psychology is always a required course all the way through college.
Brainwashing.
In most disciplines, in terms of psychology, is a mandatory
because they messing with the psyche, and they opening you up to demonic stuff, because that whole science or discipline has nothing to do, it has to do with corrupting the image of God.
And if you think about it, psychology, the science of psychology has nothing to do with anything. They're all important.
Right, of value.
Right, of anything.
Yep. So the task of setting up these affiliates in the U.S. in intelligence worldwide was given to Kurt Lewin, who we have already met, but whose name was most probably not known to more than 100 people before my story about Tavistock broke. Yet this man and John Rawlings Rees did more to damage the institutions upon which the U.S. Republic rests than anything Hitler or Stalin could have accomplished. The way in which Tavistock unraveled the wrap and woof of our social fabric, which holds the nation together, makes a chilling and frightening narrative of which the normalizing of homosexual and lesbian lifestyles is a small but significant achievement, a far greater and more chilling achievement was the success of mass brainwashing through opinion polling. See, we're getting down to the root of it. Come on
I'm
now.
laughing because every time I see, what's his name, is run for president,
Donald Trump?
and all the stuff that comes out of
Donald
his,
Trump?
yeah.
I
it
think
comes-
he's part of this group.
I know he's part of it, but it just makes me think that some of the stuff that he's saying, in essence, makes some sense.
It's true, but the thing is, if you read this manifesto, it's telling you that they have a specific time that they want us to learn what it is that they've done. So they use him to speak out, but people like us is behind the scene, we already know it. So that's what he's striking a nerve, but he's also part of the system, because he would have never been where he is financially if he wasn't part of this group of people. And that's what these next few pages is going to be interesting. So wait a minute, I'm in the wrong page. I just read 55 to you all.
And it was a 50.
All right, okay, so I'm jumping in here now, so it's skipping. Okay, so 57 says, how mediocre politicians, actors, and singers are puffed. This technique is what is known as profiling and can be applied to individuals, small or large groups of people, mass groups of people, and or organizations of all sizes. They are then puffed to become stars. While still in his early 20s in Arkansas, William Clinton was profiled for acceptance in the Rhodes Scholarship Program. His progress was profiled throughout his career, and especially during the Vietnam War period. Then after he proved himself, Clinton was groomed for the White House and then constantly puffed. There's a video Kelly has sent to me, and it's off the chart. It's called The Clinton Murders. They murdered over 100 people, and it started when he was put in this school and he went to England. So they're saying he proved himself. Y'all, that video is something else, and I'll see if I can find it, or she can, because she hopefully will be here and she can forward it to you all. Okay, and don't waste your time on things that is not going to produce any value or benefit to your life, but look this stuff up so you can be versed in it. Okay, the whole operation was under the control of the Tavistock Institute's brainwashers. This is the way these things work. Thus are the tools forged to literally make candidates, especially ones who are deemed suitable for public office. Candidates who can always be counted on to do the right thing. Congress is full of them. Gingrich was a typical successful Tavistock product until his conduct was uncovered. Trent Lott, Dick Cheney, Charles Schumer, are any of these people's names familiar to you all? Barney Frank, Tom DeLay, Dennis Hastert, Dr. Friss, and so on. On are the other examples of Tavistock graduates. The same technique is applied to actors, singers, musicians, and entertainers. Heavy propaganda was used to convince the population that unwelcome environmental, social turbulences were the result of the changing times in which we live. Whereas, as we now know, special new scientists design programs, stress programs, to artificially create environmental, social turbulences and then pass them off as resulting from a natural condition best known as changing times. Really think about this one, because we always, Obama ran on change, and so did Deval Patrick. But they're not changing what they're doing. All of these are the Tavistock brainwashing techniques to make words and slogans popular. So while everybody is talking about the times are changing, but they're the ones who's manipulating it for their benefit, okay? It's not that it's changing, they're controlling it, and they're controlling what you think, what you eat, what you wear, what you believe. And it's contrary to this.
And most of ours we get through TV.
Exactly. And commercials and billboards or whatever, slogans. Okay. Tavistock's new scientists were confident that we would not apply the principle for every effect there must be a cause. And they were right. For instance, we meekly accepted the Beatles and their novel music and lyrics. If one dare call it music and lyrics, having been told that the group wrote it all themselves. Actually, Tavistock graduate Theo Adorno, whose 12 atonal discords were scientifically pitched to create mass environmental social turbulences all across America, wrote the music for the Beatles. None of the Beatles could read music. Nevertheless, they were puffed day and night without ceasing until everything about them, lies and all, was accepted as truth. I mean, they were like, and most of you can remember how that they came on the scene when we were teenagers, and they puffed them up, and they made them so fashionable and so famous that everybody they were almost like idols.
It's so somewhat like Beyonce. Up.
But this is the beginning of it, though, for America, and we are old enough to be able to hear this, read this, and see this, and remember we can look back and see it taking place.
Okay, so my thing with all this is even with the Beatles, like Michelle was saying, most of the stuff that we get is all on TV, right, or in the media. And so there's really nothing to go against what the media is saying unless you're doing the research yourself. So how would you know that they're lying unless you're?
That's how they were able to succeed, because they took over all of the institution and all of the ways that you should have been told that this stuff wasn't true. So they control what you were given in every industry.
Yeah, and I was going to say that people who dared expose the truth
were killed.
A memory.
Because there's over 100 scientists who has been killed, who didn't believe, who was trying to be whistleblowers on things like Ebola or AIDS and different things like that. Even the plane that went down in Ukraine, the people, they had 112 people who was going to talk about AIDS. I believe it was one of those diseases. I forgot which one. But anyway, they control it. That's what make us in this little group of people, because we witness this stuff. And if you look at that, black nobility, it's called black nobility because of a cult. It's not because of the race. They believe in Lucifer is their god, and it goes them right back from Genesis 11, because it just kept on going from generation to generation to generation to generation. The people, the descendants of these people, they all intermarried, interbred. One of the videos we were watching, it might have been the same one, the black nobility. It was talking about how the King of England is really the daddy of William, Prince William. That Diana. And it started to make sense when you hear it, because what they were saying was, what's the daddy's name?
Philip?
No, not Philip.
Oh, you mean Charles?
Charles.
Yeah.
Charles married Diane, was a ceremony, and they was, and the video is breaking down what each thing was taking place. That was the ceremony. She had to be a virgin because they doing satanic rituals and ceremonies. And then Charles was already involved with Camilla, but Camilla was married to somebody else. So all he did was, in the public view, married Diana, but he still continued to be with Camilla. So then the Harry, Prince Harry, the red-headed one, is supposed to be the son of the butler, whoever that man was.
The security guard.
Well, he was both slash butler. So but they let him be raised up like he was the prince. So then that's when she left, and that man who she died with, right, his daddy was saying these people killed, and people thought he was crazy for saying all that because we didn't know any of this stuff. That was a really, really good eye-opening video. Go ahead. Oh, I thought you were saying something. Oh. Okay, so let's finish reading this. And if we can get through this, then we can maybe have a discussion. But if y'all have questions about any of this, just raise your hand and we can deal with it, because it's a lot. It says, Tavistock proved over and over again that when a large group is successfully profiled, it can be subject to interdirectional conditioning in just about every aspect of social and political life. An integral part of Tavistock's mass mind control experiments in the U.S., which have been going on since 1946, poll-taking opinion making has been by far its most successful undertakings. America was whipsawed and did not know it. See, you didn't know it. Just to prove the success of his techniques, Reese got Tavistock to test a large group of people on a conspiracy-related subject. It turned out that 97.6% of those who were questioned utterly rejected the idea that an overall conspiracy exists. How much less then would our people believe that they have been under direct attack by Tavistock for the past 56 years? We have radio talk show hosts like Rush Limbaugh who constantly tell audiences that there is no conspiracy. So you're being brainwashed. How many people would believe that for the past 56 years, Tavistock has been sending an invisible army of sharp troops into every hamlet, village, town, and city across this nation? Isn't this something? The task of the invisible, remember, the invisible army is to infiltrate, tamper with, and modify collective social behavior by means of interdirectional conditioning. The Reese Invisible Army is made up of real professionals who know their job and are dedicated to the task they were commissioned to do. It's a religion. They are found today in the halls of justice, police, churches, school circle churches. School boards, sports bodies, newspapers, television studios, government advisory boards, town councils, state legislatures, and our legion in Washington. Isn't that something? And our legion in Washington, legion. They run for, like legions, thousands. They run for every office from county councilor to sheriff to judge, from school board members to city councilmen, and even for the office of the President of the United States of America. How this works was explained by John Rawlings Reese back in 1954. Quote, their job is to apply the advanced techniques of psychological warfare as we know them to whole population groups that will grow ever larger. This is his quote now. So that whole populations may be more easily controlled. In a world driven completely mad groups of Tavistock psychologists linked to each other, capable of influencing the political and governmental field must be arbiters. The power cabal. The power cabal is the Kabbalists, the elite. The cabal we're going to talk about when we go to the next handout. Okay. Will this frank confession convince? Now that was his quote. Will this frank confession convince conspiracy skeptics? Probably not, as it is doubtful whether such closed minds could have any real knowledge of these things, because your mind's been on purpose closed and locked down. Such information is wasted on radio talking heads. A director of the Reese Invisible Army was Ronald Lippert, whose specialty was tinkering with the minds of children. Because you got to get to the children. That's why they're trying to stop homeschooling. Because if you keep your children at home, they won't get indoctrinated in this stuff. Dr. Fred Emery was another of Tavistock's linked psychologists who was on the board of President Johnson's Kerner commissions. All of the presidents. Emery was what Tavistock called a social environmental turbulence specialist. The bottom line of which is that when a whole population group is subject to social crisis, it breaks down into synoptic idealism and finally fragments, because they got to fragment the minds. That's what satanic ritual abuse is. All of this is satanic, but people don't know it. If you research satanic ritual abuse, the people who have escaped it through the power of the Holy Ghost say that their minds was fragmented in a lot of different pieces, and in each piece a demon spirit came and lived and took over possession of that piece of them, and that spirit would manifest in different personalities. Okay, y'all understand all of this so far? Okay, that is to say, it just gives up trying to cope with the problem or problems. The word environmental has nothing to do with the ecology issues, ecology issues, but has to do with the particular environment into which the specialist has injected himself with the specific intent of making trouble, turbulence, or stress patterns, like Ferguson, Maryland. Okay? This has already happened with rock and roll, drugs. This was back in the Woodstock day. Free love, abortion, sodomy, lesbianism, pornography, street gangs, a constant attack on family life, on the institution of marriage, on social order, on the Constitution, and especially on the Second and 10th Amendment. This right here, circle this paragraph, because this is where you all need to really, really, really focus on. They made these things become the law of the land. Because when they can socially engineer you to take on this, and we are able to see this play out from the youngest in this room to the oldest, you are able to see you are being indoctrinated and programmed to embrace these things through video games, through movies and dramas and TV shows and radio and talk shows, Oprah and Donahue and all of the different people. These people were used to achieve these Tavistock goals, brainwashing goals, so that even though you want to embrace holiness, you can't, because there's nobody for you to live holy with, because everybody has been taken over. This is a serious dilemma. It's serious. You got ladies who want to get married and have kids and be a housewife. But the culture, through the control of these demonic people, has made it not be. You can't find a man who hasn't been taken over by these things. This programming. Men have been programmed with this one paragraph right here, so that the Bible is irrelevant to them. Their soul going to hell is irrelevant to them. So women can't find a man to get married to who believe in godly biblical principles, so they compromise, which was part of the end result that was expected. And as people of God who shouldn't be led by the flesh but by the Spirit, we ought to be able to, if we can only rescue 1 or 2 people, we've made a difference. So we can't get angry with people when they have become a product of this. This information isn't going to do you any good, just like the Bible isn't going to do you any good unless you use it to regulate your choices, your decisions, your thought pattern, the way you deal with people. If it doesn't change, this didn't do you any good. If you don't find people to have patience with, who love you and trust you enough that you can share some of this stuff with, it didn't do you any good to know it. You just know something and pride kicks in. Because you're so puffed up because you know it, which is part of the brainwashing. You're not operating according to the Bible. That's what I'm trying to get people. This is your weapon here. This what protects you from this. Because we've stayed in this, the Holy Spirit was able to lead us to this information, to respond to you. The Holy Spirit is truth. The Holy Spirit is real, and we're living in dark days where there always is going to be a remnant of people who have so much of the presence of God in them that their minds was on the verge of being brainwashed, but God is able to pull it back. It shows you the power of God. Am I making sense to you all today? Please let this work. I believe this book was published sometime maybe in 2005 or the early part of 2000. And we now 10 years in the future see that the law of the land is sodomy and lesbianism. I mean, it's legal federally. So you can see that this isn't stuff that somebody has made up. This is not a conspiracy. We see this playing out right before our eyes. And we see it too back when we were teenagers with the bell bottoms and the afros and the platform shoes and the Beatles and the rock music and people doing drugs and free love and immorality. We lived through this, but we didn't know that we were being programmed.
So if you look at this, well, drugs are legal, most of them.
Right.
Like marijuana, they made marijuana.
Right, and that they're continuing to work it out. And this also comes from Helena Blavatsky, who was an occultist that ended up doing writing her and Alice Bailey with Lucifer's Trust. And I mean, it was first called Lucifer's Trust, and because people was getting on her about it, they call it Lucis Trust, which is at the United Nations building. They had located near or in the United Nations building. And the Pope or the Vatican on Mount Graham in Arizona has a telescope, and the name of the telescope is Lucifer. Same thing. Okay? Any questions or comments so far? Okay, let's finish. I want to finish up this. Where this has happened, we find communities. This is another interesting paragraph. We find communities powerless to cope with a broken down justice system, school boards, teaching evolution, minors, school boards, the teachers are teaching evolution, minors being encouraged to buy condoms, and even children's rights being pushed. This is, see, all of this. Children rights usually mean children should be allowed to disobey their parents. A key issue in every socialist child care program. Members of the Reese Invisible Army are entrenched in the House and Senate, in the military, the police, and in virtually every government office in the land. The change agents are the teachers, teaching the Agenda 21 and Common Core. It's right here. These two paragraphs.
Powerful.
It is. After studying the state of California, I came to the conclusion that it has the largest contingent of invisible army shock troops in the country, which has made California something very close to a socialist police state. I believe California will be the role model for the rest of the nation. At present, there are no laws on the books that make this type of conditioning illegal. Rees and Lewin researched the laws of England and the United States and concluded that it was legal to condition a person without his or her consent or knowledge. That goes to answer to your question. We need to change this. Polling is an integral part of conditioning. Tavistock's invisible army of shock troops has changed the way America thinks about rock, premarital sex, drug taking, children born out of wedlock, promiscuity, marriage, divorce, family life, abortion, homosexuality, and lesbianism, the Constitution, and yes, even murder. Not to mention that lack of morals is fine as long as one does a good job. In the early years of Tavistock, the leaderless group concept was used to lay the America we once knew in the dust. In charge of the project was W.R. Bunyan, who ran the Wharton School of Economics for years, where such nonsense as free trade and Keynesian economics are taught. Japan stayed with the American model taught by General MacArthur, not the Wharton School fraud. And look at Japan today. Don't blame the Japanese for their success. Blame Tavistock for destroying our economic system. But Japan's turn is coming. No nation will be spared in the final onslaught to usher in a one world government and a new world order. Genesis 11. You got it?
Mhm.